It was a crisp autumn evening in Los Angeles, the kind of night where the city's skyline shimmered like 1,000 fallen stars. Tom Cruise, the legendary actor, walked briskly through the dimly lit streets of a quiet neighborhood after a long day of filming. He had taken a detour, seeking a rare moment of solitude away from the relentless flashes of paparazzi cameras. As he strolled past a small, cozy diner, a voice, innocent and curious, called out to him. "Excuse me, sir. Are you Tom Cruise?" Tom turned around, surprised. Standing before him was a little boy, no older than 10, with a tattered backpack slung over his shoulders. His clothes were slightly worn, but his eyes gleamed with an inquisitive spark. Tom smiled, crouching to the boy's eye level. "I am. What's your name, buddy?" "Jacob," the boy replied, gripping his backpack strap tightly. He hesitated for a moment before blurting out, "Are you successful in your life?" The question took Tom by surprise. He had been asked countless things throughout his career, about his movies, stunts, relationships, but never something so direct, so raw. He saw something in Jacob's gaze, a longing beyond mere curiosity. Tom chuckled, but his expression softened. "That's a big question, Jacob. Why do you ask?" The boy looked down at his sneakers, scuffing them against the pavement. "Because I want to know what success really means. My mom says success is about money, my teacher says it's about grades, and my friend says it's about being famous. But I don't know what to believe." Tom studied Jacob, sensing that this was more than just a passing question. It was a boy searching for something, perhaps guidance, perhaps hope. Taking a deep breath, Tom patted the ground beside him. "Come on, sit with me. I'll tell you a story." Jacob's eyes widened. "A story?" Tom nodded. "Yeah, and by the end of it, you'll have your answer." Jacob sat down eagerly, and Tom, looking up at the sky, began his tale. Tom leaned against the diner's brick wall, his eyes glistening under the streetlights. He took a deep breath and began his story. "You know, Jacob, when I was about your age, I wasn't much different from you. I had big dreams, but I also had a lot of doubts. I wasn't born into a rich family, I didn't have famous parents, and I certainly didn't have an easy childhood. My mom worked long hours, my dad, well, he wasn't always around. Life was tough and we moved around a lot. Sometimes, I felt like I didn't belong anywhere." Jacob leaned forward, listening intently. "But despite all that, I had one thing," Tom continued, tapping his chest. "I had a fire inside me. I wanted to do something big, something meaningful. I wanted to act, to be in movies, to tell stories that inspired people." Jacob's eyes widened. "But wasn't it hard? Didn't people tell you that you couldn't do it?" Tom smiled. "All the time. People laughed at me. They said I was too short, too inexperienced, that I'd never make it. But, Jacob, let me tell you something." He leaned in. "Success isn't about what people say about you. It's about what you believe in here." He placed his hand over his heart. Jacob nodded slowly, as if absorbing every word. "But believing in yourself isn't enough," Tom continued. "You have to fight for it. I worked small jobs, took acting classes, and auditioned again and again. I failed more times than I can count. I was rejected by casting directors who didn't even look at me. But you know what I did every time?" Jacob shook his head. "I got back up. No matter how hard they pushed me down, I stood back up. I told myself, one day, they're going to see what I can do. And eventually, they did." Jacob's mouth was slightly open in awe. "How did you not give up?" Tom chuckled. "Because giving up means you lose the chance to prove yourself. And I wasn't ready to lose that chance." He paused, watching Jacob's expression shift as the boy processed his words. "Jacob, do you know what the biggest mistake people make about success?" Tom asked. Jacob thought for a moment, then shook his head. "They think success is something you achieve and then it's over," Tom said. "But it's not. Success isn't a destination. It's a journey. And that journey is full of failures, lessons, and moments where you'll want to quit. But if you keep moving forward, even when the world tells you to stop, that's when you truly succeed." Jacob was silent for a long time. Then, softly, he asked, "But what if you try really hard and still fail?" Tom's gaze softened. "Then you learn, and you try again." The boy bit his lip, thinking deeply. Tom smiled and patted Jacob's shoulder. "Let me tell you about a time I almost gave up. Maybe that will answer your question." Jacob nodded eagerly, ready to hear more. Tom exhaled, his gaze drifting toward the city skyline as if reliving a moment buried deep in his past. "There was a time," he began, "when I almost walked away from everything. I was young, struggling, and barely making enough money to survive. I auditioned for roles every day, but rejection became my closest companion." Jacob's brow furrowed. "Even you got rejected?" Tom chuckled. "Oh, Jacob, I got rejected more times than I can count. There was this one audition. I had prepared for it for weeks. I memorized every line, practiced every emotion, and convinced myself that this was the one that would change everything. But when I walked into that room," he paused, his expression darkening slightly. "The casting director barely looked at me. I was in and out in less than a minute." Jacob gasped. "That's not fair." "It wasn't," Tom agreed. "But that's the reality of chasing dreams. It's not always fair." I remember walking home that night, my heart heavy. I thought to myself, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should quit. Jacob's eyes filled with concern. "But you didn't, right?" Tom smiled faintly. "No, I didn't. But I almost did." That night, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was wasting my time. I had no money, no backup plan, and no one in the industry who believed in me. It felt like the world was telling me to give up. Jacob's voice was barely above a whisper. "What changed?" Tom's eyes softened. "A letter." Jacob blinked. "A letter." Tom nodded. "From my mother. She had written to me, telling me how proud she was of me, even though I hadn't made it yet. She told me that real success wasn't about money or fame. It was about trying. She said, 'Tommy, you are successful the moment you refuse to give up on yourself.'" Jacob swallowed hard. "That's beautiful." Tom smiled. It hit me like a lightning bolt. I realized that I wasn't failing. I was learning. Every rejection, every setback, every moment of doubt was shaping me into the person I needed to be. I wasn't at the end of my journey. I was just getting started. Jacob's fingers curled into fists. "So what did you do?" Tom leaned forward. "I got up the next morning, looked in the mirror and told myself, one more audition, just one more. And that's what I kept telling myself every day. Just one more." Jacob's eyes were filled with admiration. "And then," Tom grinned, "then Risky Business happened. Then Top Gun happened. Then Mission Impossible. But you see, Jacob, those movies weren't my real success." Jacob tilted his head in confusion. "They weren't." "No," Tom said, shaking his head. "My real success was making the choice to keep going when everything inside me told me to quit." Jacob sat in silence, absorbing every word. Tom smiled and tapped the boy's chest gently. "Success starts here, Jacob. Not in your wallet, not in a trophy, not in what others say about you. It starts inside you, the moment you refuse to give up." Jacob swallowed hard, his eyes glistening with emotion. I think I understand now." Tom chuckled. "Good, but I'm not done yet. Let me tell you about the moment I realized success wasn't what I thought it was." Jacob wiped his eyes and nodded eagerly. "I'm ready." Tom leaned back against the diner's brick wall, his expression thoughtful. The distant hum of Los Angeles traffic filled the silence between them before he spoke again. "You see, Jacob, for a long time, I thought success was about winning. Getting the big roles, making the most money, being the guy everyone admired. And for a while, it felt amazing. The world suddenly knew my name. People cheered when they saw me. Studios wanted to work with me. I had everything I ever dreamed of." Jacob's eyes widened. "That sounds awesome." Tom smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in it. "It was, first. But then something strange happened." Jacob frowned. "What?" Tom exhaled. I started to feel empty. Jacob blinked. Empty? But how? You were rich and famous. Tom nodded. That's what confused me. I had everything I thought I wanted. Yet, late at night, when the cameras were off and the crowds were gone, I'd sit alone in my big house and wonder, why don't I feel happy? Jacob tilted his head. But success is supposed to make you happy, right? Tom chuckled softly. That's what people think. But here's the truth. Success without purpose is just an illusion. Jacob's eyebrows scrunched together. What do you mean? Tom thought for a moment, then smiled. Okay, imagine this. Let's say you dream of having the biggest, coolest bike in the world. You work hard, save up, and finally buy it. First, it's exciting. You ride it everywhere, show it off to your friends. But then, after a while, you realize something. Jacob's eyes narrowed. What? The bike itself doesn't make you happy. What you do with it does. Maybe it's the races you win, the adventures you go on, or the people you meet along the way. But just having the bike? That's not enough. Jacob's lips parted in understanding. So, you're saying being famous wasn't enough? Tom nodded. Exactly. Success by itself, money, fame, awards, it's just stuff. It looks great on the outside, but it doesn't fill you up on the inside. And that's when I realized something even bigger. Jacob leaned in, his curiosity piqued. What? Tom's eyes twinkled. Real success isn't about what you have. It's about who you help. Jacob sat up straighter. Who you help? Tom nodded. Think about it. The greatest people in history, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, even sports legends like Michael Jordan or great inventors like Steve Jobs, they weren't just successful because they were great at what they did. They were successful because they gave something to the world. They changed lives. Jacob was quiet, processing the words. Tom continued. Once I understood that, everything changed. I stopped chasing success just for myself and started thinking about how I could give back. How I could inspire others, lift people up, make a difference. Jacob swallowed hard. And did it make you happy? Tom's smile was warm, more than anything else ever could. Jacob wiped at his eyes, though he wasn't sure why he felt like crying. He took a deep breath. So, success isn't about money. It's not about being famous. It's about helping others. Tom nodded. That's the real magic. When you use your success to make the world better, that's when you truly win. Jacob looked down at his hands, deep in thought. I think I want to be successful like that. Tom chuckled. Then you're already ahead of most people, Jacob. The boy smiled, but a new question burned in his mind. But how do I know if I'm on the right path? Tom grinned. That's a great question. Let me tell you one last story about the moment I finally understood my purpose. Jacob's heart pounded with anticipation. Tell me. Tom glanced up at the night sky for a moment, as if searching for the right words. Then he looked back at Jacob, his expression softer than before. I remember the exact moment when I realized what true success meant, he said. It wasn't during an award ceremony, or when my movies made millions. It was in a hospital room. Jacob's eyebrows furrowed. A hospital? Tom nodded. I had been invited to visit a children's hospital. Kids who were battling serious illnesses. At first, I thought I was just there to cheer them up, to take some photos, maybe sign a few autographs. But then I met a boy named Ethan. Jacob leaned forward, listening intently. Ethan was about your age, Tom continued, his voice quieter now. He had been fighting cancer for years. He was weak, his hair had fallen out, and he spent most of his days in bed. But the moment I walked into his room, his face lit up like I was his greatest hero. Jacob swallowed hard. Tom smiled sadly. He told me he had watched all my movies, that he wanted to be brave like me, that my characters made him feel strong even when he felt weak. And then, he said something that changed my life forever. Jacob's breath caught in his throat. What did he say? Tom's eyes glistened as he whispered. He said, Mr. Cruz, I want to grow up and do something great like you. But if I don't, will you do it for me? Jacob felt a lump in his throat. Tom let out a slow breath. At that moment, Jacob, I realized this was success. Not the fame, not the money, not the big Hollywood premieres. It was the chance to inspire, to give hope, to make a difference in someone's life. Jacob wiped his eyes quickly. What happened to Ethan? Tom was silent for a long moment. Then he whispered, "He didn't make it." Jacob's lips trembled. "Oh." Tom reached out and squeezed the boy's shoulder gently. "But you know what?" His words never left me. From that day on, I stopped chasing success just for myself. I made a promise to live for something bigger, to lift others up, to inspire, to give instead of just take. Jacob sniffed, looking down at his hands. "I think I get it now. Success isn't about what you have. It's about who you help." Tom smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "That's right." Jacob looked up, his eyes shining with new determination. "I want to be successful like that." Tom grinned. "Then you're already on the right path, Jacob." The boy nodded, but after a moment, his expression turned thoughtful. "But what if I don't know how to help people? What if I don't have anything special to offer?" Tom chuckled, ruffling Jacob's hair. "Ah, that's the best part. You do have something special, Jacob. Everyone does. Let me tell you how I found my gift." Jacob's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Tell me." Tom leaned back against the wall, his eyes glimmering as he studied Jacob's eager expression. "You see, Jacob, a lot of people think they need to be rich or famous before they can help others. But that's not true." Jacob tilted his head. "It's not." Tom shook his head. "No. Every single person has something special inside them. Something they can use to make the world better. It's just a matter of finding it." Jacob frowned. "But how do you know what your gift is?" Tom smiled. "Well, let me ask you something. What's something you love doing? Something that makes you excited just thinking about it?" Jacob thought for a moment, then hesitantly said, I like drawing and telling stories." Tom's smile widened. "That's great. And do you know what that means?" Jacob shook his head. "It means your gift might be storytelling. Maybe you'll grow up to be an artist or a filmmaker or an author. Maybe you'll create stories that inspire millions of people. Maybe your words will change someone's life, just like Ethan's words changed mine." Jacob's eyes widened. "Really? But I'm just a kid." Tom chuckled. "Doesn't matter. Success doesn't wait for you to grow up. You can start now." Jacob bit his lip. "But what if I'm not good enough?" Tom's expression turned serious. "Let me tell you something, Jacob. Every successful person started as a beginner. Nobody is good enough when they first start. I wasn't. When I first tried acting, I was terrible. I forgot my lines, I got nervous, I messed up auditions. But I didn't stop." Jacob swallowed. "So you just kept going?" Tom nodded. "That's the secret. You keep going, you keep learning, you keep growing. And one day you'll look back and realize you became great." Jacob took a deep breath. "So, you think I can do something important? Even if I'm just a kid who likes to draw?" Tom smiled and tapped Jacob's chest. "Jacob, your gift is already inside you. You just have to believe in it, work at it, and use it to make a difference." Jacob's eyes shone with newfound determination. I think I want to tell stories that help people." Tom grinned. "Then that's exactly what you should do." Jacob nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "But what if people don't believe in me? What if they laugh at me?" Tom's smile didn't fade. "Ah, that's part of the journey, my friend. And I've got just the story to tell you about that." Jacob's eyes lit up with curiosity. "I want to hear it." Tom laughed. "All right then. Let me tell you about the time everyone doubted me, and how I proved them wrong." Tom stretched his legs out in front of him and let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "You know, Jacob, there was a time when nobody believed in me. Not my teachers, not my friends, not even some of my own family members. They all thought I was crazy for wanting to be an actor." Jacob frowned. "But why? Didn't they see how talented you were?" Tom grinned. "That's the thing, back then I wasn't talented. I was just a kid with a dream and a whole lot of determination. But in their eyes, dreams weren't enough. They said things like, acting is too risky, you're not tall enough, you don't have the right look, or you should just get a normal job. Jacob's fists clenched. That's so unfair. Tom nodded. It was. And you know what? For a while I started to believe them. I wondered if they were right. Maybe I was just chasing an impossible dream. Jacob's eyes were wide. But you didn't stop. Tom smirked. Nope. Because one day, I realized something important. People will always doubt you when you're chasing something big. Not because they don't believe in you, but because they're afraid to take risks themselves. They project their fears onto you. Jacob thought about that for a moment. So, just because someone says you can't do something doesn't mean they're right? Tom snapped his fingers. Exactly. The only person who decides what you're capable of is you. Jacob sat up straighter. So how did you prove them wrong? Tom chuckled. By working twice as hard. While other people were out partying, I was practicing my lines. While others were doubting me, I was taking acting classes. Every rejection, every no I heard, I used it as fuel to get better. Jacob's eyes sparkled. And then you got your big break? Tom nodded. One day, I walked into an audition that changed everything. I wasn't the best actor in the room, but I was the most determined. The director saw that. He saw how much I wanted it. And that's when I got cast in my first big role. Jacob grinned. So you did prove them wrong. Tom chuckled. I sure did. And years later, when those same people who doubted me saw my name in movie theaters, you know what they said? Jacob shook his head. Tom leaned in with a playful smirk. I always knew he'd make it. Jacob burst out laughing. No way. Oh yes, Tom said, shaking his head with amusement. That's just how people are. When you're struggling, they'll doubt you. But when you succeed, they'll act like they believed in you all along. Jacob's expression grew serious. So, what should I do when people doubt me? Tom placed a hand on Jacob's shoulder. You smile, and you keep going. You don't argue, you don't waste time proving them wrong with words. You prove them wrong by winning. Jacob nodded, his mind racing. I'm going to remember that. Tom grinned. Good. Because if you want to be successful, Jacob, there's one more thing you need to understand. Jacob's curiosity sparked again. What is it? Tom's smile softened. That success isn't just about getting something. It's about giving something back. Jacob's eyes narrowed. Giving back. Tom nodded. Let me tell you why the greatest people in the world aren't just successful. They're also kind. Jacob leaned in, eager for more. Tom's expression softened as he looked at Jacob. He could see the boy was absorbing every word, his young mind piecing together what success truly meant. You see, Jacob, Tom continued, a lot of people think success is just about taking, about winning, making money, and proving everyone wrong. But the real greats, the ones who are remembered forever, they don't just take, they give. Jacob tilted his head. What do you mean? Tom smiled. Let me tell you about someone I met years ago. A man who had everything: money, power, success. But do you know what he told me? Jacob shook his head, eyes wide with curiosity. He said, Tom, I spent my whole life climbing the ladder of success. And when I got to the top, I realized my ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Jacob frowned. What does that mean? Tom sighed. It means he had everything he thought he wanted: fame, wealth, respect. But he felt empty because he never gave anything back. He had spent his whole life chasing success for himself, but he never used his success to help anyone else. Jacob was quiet for a moment. So, even if you become rich and famous, it doesn't mean you'll be happy? Tom nodded. Exactly. The happiest, most fulfilled people in the world. They don't just focus on themselves. They use their success to lift others up. Jacob thought about that. Like how you help kids in hospitals? Tom's smile grew. That's right. That's why I visit them, donate to charities, and help young actors get started. Because that is what makes success worth it. Jacob nodded slowly. So, if I ever become successful, I should use it to help people? Tom tapped Jacob's chest. Not if you become successful. When you become successful. And yes, you should. Because that's how you leave a real legacy. Jacob swallowed hard. A legacy? Tom's voice grew softer. Success fades, Jacob. Money comes and goes. Fame disappears. But the people you help? They remember you forever. That's what true success is. Changing lives. Making the world a little better than how you found it. Jacob took a deep breath. His young face filled with deep thought. I never thought about it like that before. Tom smiled. Most people don't. But if you remember this lesson now, you'll already be ahead of the game. Jacob's lips pressed together. So, to be successful, I need to find what I love. Work hard, believe in myself, and help others? Tom's face lit up. You got it, kid. Jacob grinned. I think I know what I want to do now. Tom laughed. That's what I like to hear. But before we finish, let me tell you the most important thing I've learned about success. Jacob's eyes widened. There's more. Tom chuckled. Oh yeah, the final lesson. The one thing that truly determines whether someone will succeed or fail. Jacob sat up straight, his heart pounding. Tell me. Tom took a deep breath. All right, kid. Listen carefully, because this one is everything. Tom leaned in, his voice softer now, but filled with conviction. Jacob, the most important thing I've learned about success, the thing that truly determines whether someone will make it or not, is one simple word. Jacob's breath caught in his throat. What is it? Tom smiled and said, resilience. Jacob blinked. Resilience. Tom nodded. That's the difference between people who almost make it and the ones who do. Jacob frowned. What does it mean? Tom sat up straighter. Resilience means no matter how hard things get, no matter how many times you fail, no matter how many people tell you you can't, you keep going. You don't quit. You don't give up. Jacob's lips parted. Even when it feels impossible? Tom smiled. Especially then. Jacob swallowed hard. But what if it hurts? What if you feel like you'll never make it? Tom's expression turned serious. Then you remember this. Every great person in history has felt that way at some point. Every champion, every artist, every inventor, every hero, you name it. They all wanted to quit at some point. But they didn't. That's why they're great. Jacob nodded slowly, absorbing the words like they were the most important thing he had ever heard. Tom continued. Do you know how many times Thomas Edison failed before he invented the light bulb? Jacob shook his head. Over 1,000 times, Tom said. Most people would have quit after a few failures. But he kept going. When someone asked him how he felt about failing so much, do you know what he said? Jacob leaned in. What? Tom grinned. I didn't fail 1,000 times. I just found 1,000 ways that didn't work. Jacob's mouth fell open. Wow. Tom chuckled. Yeah, that's the mindset of someone who refuses to fail. Someone who understands that every mistake, every setback, every rejection, it's just a stepping stone to success. Jacob exhaled. So, if I want to be successful, I have to keep going, no matter what? Tom nodded. That's right. You have to be the kind of person who gets knocked down and gets back up every single time. Because the truth is, Jacob, most people quit right before they succeed. They stop trying because it's hard. But the ones who push through, they win. Jacob's fingers tightened into fists. I don't want to be a quitter. Tom smiled. Then you won't be. Jacob looked up at the sky, his eyes shining. I think I finally understand what success really is. Tom grinned. Good. But let's make sure. He leaned forward. Tell me, Jacob, what is success? Jacob took a deep breath and said, success isn't just about money or fame. It's about doing what you love, working hard, believing in yourself, and never giving up. It's about helping others and making the world better. And most of all, it's about resilience. Tom's smile stretched wide. Kid, you got it. Jacob beamed, his heart pounding with excitement. Tom patted the boy's shoulder. Now, there's just one last thing I need to tell you. Jacob's eyes widened. There's more. Tom chuckled. Just one final thought. Something you need to remember every single day for the rest of your life. Jacob swallowed. What is it? Tom's eyes twinkled. Listen close, kid. Because this is the most important thing of all. Tom took a deep breath and looked Jacob in the eyes, his voice steady and full of meaning. Jacob, the most important thing you need to remember about success is this. You are already enough. Jacob blinked. What do you mean? Tom smiled. So many people spend their whole lives chasing success because they think it will make them feel like they're finally good enough. They think if I get rich, people will respect me. If I become famous, I'll finally matter. If I achieve my dream, I'll finally be happy. Jacob nodded. Yeah. Isn't that true? Tom shook his head. No, kid, it's not. Because if you don't believe you're already enough right now as you are, then no amount of success will ever make you feel that way. Jacob's eyebrows furrowed. But don't you have to work hard to prove yourself? Tom chuckled. Of course. You work hard, you push yourself, you grow. But not because you're not enough. You do it because you are. You already have everything you need inside you. You just have to unlock it. Jacob was silent for a moment, letting the words sink in. So, I don't have to be rich or famous to feel like I matter. Tom smiled warmly. Nope. You matter right now. You have value right now. Success doesn't give you worth, Jacob. You already have it. Success just helps you show it to the world. Jacob swallowed hard, feeling something shift inside him. I think I get it now. Tom patted the boy's shoulder. Good. Because once you truly believe that, nothing in this world can stop you. Jacob looked down at his small hands, then back up at Tom. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to tell stories that inspire people. And I'm never going to give up. Tom grinned. That's the spirit. He stood up and stretched. All right, kid. It's getting late. You better get home before your mom starts wondering where you are. Jacob jumped up, his heart racing with newfound energy. Yeah, but, Tom. Tom turned back. Yeah. Jacob hesitated, then smiled shyly. Thank you. For everything. Tom's eyes twinkled. Anytime, Jacob. Jacob took a step back, still holding on to every word Tom had said. Then, just as Tom turned to leave, Jacob called out, Hey, Tom! Tom looked over his shoulder. Yeah. Jacob grinned. You are successful. Tom chuckled. You know what, kid? So are you. With that, he gave Jacob one last nod before walking off into the night, leaving the boy standing there. His heart full, his mind racing, and his future brighter than ever.